Eskom wants the City of Tshwane to settle its 1.9 billion rand debt. That's billion with a B. This is the third time the city has been at loggerheads with the power utility over default payments. In a recent statement, Eskom says Tshwane's March 2023 invoice was underpaid by 179 million rand, while in April, an amount of 776 million rand wasn't paid at all. The city says if this is not settled, it may have to go the legal route. Let's get your reaction from the city now and speak to Finance MMC Peter Sutton, who joins us via our video link this morning. It's great to have you on the program, Peter. Thanks so much indeed for making time. I mean, are any of these figures in dispute?
No, they're not in dispute, except the March payment has been made earlier in the week. But we do owe the April invoice, and the May invoice became due and payable about 2-3 days back. And it's the same issue we've had over the last year. You know, we've had numerous of these letters issued by Eskom, but the city remains in a liquidity challenge because of the payment levels. We don't get the cash in fast enough. Eskom has a 14-day payment turnaround period expectation, and we get cash in on average about 60-75 days. And that's where this problem lies.
Oh, so you're saying this is residents and your customers' fault?
No, what we're saying is that we can't collect the cash, and we have a cash liquidity problem in the City of Tshwane, and we need to collect. Residents use electricity. Those bills are payable immediately. On average, they pay 60 days, 70 days plus, and the money can't come from anywhere else as from the people who consume the electricity. So due to the slow collection rate and the mistakes and problems we have with our collection and credit control policy, we do have this credit control or this liquidity challenge.
Yeah, I mean, but I think anybody who's done accounting will tell you that you can kind of deal with that issue in other ways. So you're telling us there is no other department that could at least free that amount of money so that Eskom doesn't get to a point where they have to make public statements asking for the city to pay up?
Well, I would certainly hope no accountant will make a comment like that, because that's a really a fundamentally flawed comment. If you look at the budget of a municipality, there's a function to a service: electricity, water, sanitation. So if the suggestion is we should take money away from water to pay electricity simply just because residents won't pay, well, I think that's why local governments in South Africa are in a mess where they are. So no, there are no other functions, because the budget is so tightly knitted that you can't cross-subsidize functions from tariffs. What we do have a problem with is that in our debtors book, the City of Tshwane has financed to the tune of 5 billion rand that we had to pay Eskom that residents hasn't paid for. The solution is not to go take money away from other aspects to finance that. We need to collect that money, and we need to break this culture of non-payment of residents and get them to pay their bills for the consumption they use.
I think you may have misunderstood my question, so perhaps let me better phrase it. I'm not saying residents must be let go of scot-free, but if there's an issue with the rate at which you're able to collect that money and there are creditors to be settled, the question I'm asking if there's any other funds that perhaps aren't currently being used that could be used essentially to ensure that you have a good relationship with Eskom while you continue with the efforts that I imagine are in place to get money from residents.
Unfortunately, there's not, and that's why we are in the liquidity challenge. So the liquidity position means that there are no cash reserves to rely on. Now, in normal circumstances, you will have cash reserves that you can rely on to breach that shortfall. You're 100% correct in that assumption. To say that you will use cash reserves to finance, cash reserves to finance your debt, and then obviously recoup that. But in the case of the City of Tshwane, pre-COVID, we still had a bit of cash reserves. Post-COVID, in the COVID period, there was a 4 billion rand loss that was incurred of the City of Tshwane during the illegal administration process that drained our cash reserves, and subsequent years has not helped either. So we haven't been able to build up those cash reserves, so we don't have any rolling cash to finance the short-term difference, and that's exactly where the problem is.
Yeah.
But you do get other means of income, for instance, equitable share, but you can't use the equitable share to pay Eskom because there's indigents and poorest of the poor that needs to be serviced from that as well.
Right. Part of what Eskom is claiming in their statement is that they've tried to engage you several times, and in fact, they're coming out with this publicly is almost a matter of last resort. Those are my words. Is that perception that is being created true?
Well, look, I'm gonna answer that as best as I can. Firstly, I do want to say I don't think Eskom is wrong in their approach. I mean, they run a business model themselves. They rely on, and they're in the same position as we. We in the position people don't pay us. We have this effect. If we don't pay Eskom, it has an effect on them. They can't do their maintenance. They can't do what they need to do to keep the lights on. So I don't judge them from expecting us to pay, not at all. What I do find very interesting about Eskom, though, you know, there's other municipalities in Gauteng that owes them billions, far more than what we do. 4.5 billion, I think, was the last I saw from Infuleni. Soweto, I think the last I saw was 10 billion. But I do find it very interesting that they always issue these letters to us in the City of Tshwane. But that's in their right. Our responsibility is we must pay them. Their responsibility is they must keep the lights on and grow the economy through electricity provision. So they're not wrong in doing that, but we are engaging them. I don't think that perception is correct. We are engaging them consistently. We are in a lot of meetings with them. We've put aspects on the table for payment arrangements to try to keep to that as best as we can. I think we've defaulted on one occasion, but for the rest of them, we've kept to that. So we're certainly not sticking our head in the sand and try to ignore them. And you know, we will continue to do that. But we have a lot of hard work as the city to fix this, to correct this, and then to fix this liquidity situation.
Wow.
But I don't think Eskom is wrong in their letters.
I hear that and I take it. But you've basically stopped short of saying this Eskom may be singling the city out.
Yeah, I do sometimes feel like that. I mean, I do find it very interesting. Have you seen any other letters being issued? And perhaps it's maybe a good idea to get Eskom on the line and ask them about debt to other municipalities, because that's my point. I find it very interesting that the letters are consistently being issued against the City of Tshwane and not against the other municipalities. And Eskom sits with a debt of far over 40 billion to them. The City of Tshwane owes 1.9 billion, of which billion of that has been overdue for about 3 days. The question is, what are they doing on the other debt? And I certainly don't see any other letters being issued. So yes, I do think in some cases they are singling us out.
Sure, and I'm sure Eskom would like to respond to that. But since I've got you on the line, perhaps you can help me understand why you think that may be the case. To what end?
No idea. I can't tell you. And like I say, I don't think they're wrong in doing that. I just find it interesting that I don't see any other letters. But I don't think that's the point. The point is that they're not wrong in issuing their letters to us. They're not wrong to expect their payment from us. But they also certainly has a responsibility, probably through other means where they collect cash from other municipalities as well.
Sure. You know, in many instances, I think most South Africans, including residents in Tshwane, are willing to pay for services that they receive. But as is the case in Johannesburg, I can imagine there are many people in Tshwane who are hesitant at best to part with money for services that they feel aren't guaranteed. And not just because of Eskom's woes, and those are well documented. We speak about those on a daily basis. But there are also serious governance issues that breed into society this trust deficit. To what extent do you reckon that's contributed to the challenges you're facing in collecting revenue from residents?
Look, I do think there's a major trust deficit, especially in the City of Tshwane, over the last couple of years, political instability and all that. So I think your perception is 100% correct. I think in many cases, people are feeling hesitant to pay, and part of the work that we need to do is we need to rebuild that trust relationship with residents and provide services. The interesting thing just is with when it comes to services, like for instance, electricity. Now, you know, electricity, if you have electricity and you have your lights on, you know, that's a service that's being provided. If there's a power outage, you don't pay for that. You know, your meter doesn't continue to run if you have a power outage.
Wow.
So, you know, it is a bit of a difficult argument to make to say that, you know, I'm not paying, you know, because I had 20 days of or 25 days of electricity this month and I had 2 days of no electricity, so now I'm not paying my bill at all. You need to pay for the services that you do get. And I think that's our position on especially electricity and water. You pay for what you consume.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is also not really central to our discussion today, but anecdotally, we know of people who feel that their meters, ironically, those are the words you used, their meters continue running even in a context where there isn't any power being provided. But I suppose that's a discussion that we'll have when it comes to, just how the system itself is working. But the concessions you've made, I think, are very important, and hopefully we get to the bottom of what's actually taking place. For now, Finance MMC Peter Sutton, thanks for your time. Appreciate your speaking to us here on the AM Report.